and I enlisted in February of '51. And of course, after basic, most everybody was going right to Korea. I went to Arkansas for basic, then I went to Oklahoma for artillery training. And then you get like a week's leave at home or something, and then we all were going to Seattle, Washington. And at that time we went by ship, and it took us 10 days. And then we got on another ship and took us to Korea, and we landed at Inchon at that time. Of course, I was in the artillery, so we all were sent to different divisions. As soon as you got to the base camp there, you know, they told you where we were. We were issued a rifle, and we had everything else, and they sent us to different outfits. I went to the 1st Cavalry Division, which is a real famous division, of course, from back in the Indian War days. In the artillery, we were firing 105 howitzers, and we fired all day long. I was in fire direction. I would talk to the forward observer, and he would give us the range, and then I would give it to the gunners. I'd been trained in artillery in Oklahoma there, and we had radios, of course, portable radios and battery-powered radios, and we had a radio truck, and so there would be a forward observer up on a hill someplace where we could see the enemy real close, and he'd have 1 or 2 gunners to protect him because he was busy radioing us fire direction, and he would give us the yardage, and then we would give it to us, and then I would give it to the gunners and the range, and we'd fire 1 or 2 rounds, and then he'd say up 100 yards, left 50 yards, because at that time most of the North Koreans and the Chinese, they were in caves, you know, and trenches. You wanted to own the hilltops. That's how you won the war, because you take the hilltops, and then there was a lot of them. But so he would give us the target and the range, and he'd correct our fire, and then we'd blow the enemy up right in the caves and the trenches. And that's what we did all day long. And then every few days, all right, tomorrow we're packing up. You got to move. There's heavy, wherever the infantry was having a hard time or needed support. Sometimes we'd only drive a few miles down the road, but we'd have to hook up the guns and the howitzers and pack up everything the night before. And then in the morning we'd drive maybe just a short distance, but then we'd set up and start firing. So that's what we did. I did that from, I don't know, I got to Korea like right around May or June in the summer of '51. But sometimes it was hard. We'd be sleeping on the ground a lot of times. Just we had a sleeping bag, and then winter came, and a lot of times we just throw down a tarp, and we finally got winter outfits, and then sometimes we'd get a pup tent sent up. You'd share a pup tent with a friend, and so sometimes we'd have a pup tent to sleep in. Sometimes we'd just sleep on the ground. Our bathroom was a hole in the ground. You know, that was it. We wore the same clothes for weeks. The only thing we took off was our boots. We slept with all our clothes on and just put our boots in the bottom of the sleeping bag. And so otherwise they'd be too stiff and cold in the morning to get them on. They were anyway. But then later they kind of changed my job a little bit. I became a radio operator in the back of a truck. We operated a radio 24 hours a day. There was like maybe 4 of us. It took different shifts, and because we had to have the radios going 24 hours a day. We would get fire direction. We get we get weather reports, the wind, the velocity, things like that affected the artillery, and the information would come over the radios. But a lot of times the enemy they'd find a frequency and block it, and we'd have to go on another frequency.
That by next Christmas, our country will have won a just and honorable peace, not only on the battlefields of Korea, but throughout the entire world. And that we will be able then to spend next Christmas and experience the Christmas spirit of brotherly love with our loved ones at home.
I remember real well, Christmas Eve, we had to have lights out at 10 o'clock, but we lit candles and we sat on the floor and had treats from home. And they left a record player there that played single records, and it was a Frank Sinatra record. And we played that one record over and over and over again. We had snacks from home, we shared, and when it comes Christmas Eve here, even today, we have Christmas Eve usually at our house, and about midnight when everybody goes, I sit by the fire and I usually have tears because I think about Christmas Eve over there, and I still remember it real well. I get tears quite often. And come springtime, we trained up there on Hokkaido. They had a lot of snow. We heard rumors, so we're going to go back to Korea. And sure enough, we started training with a group of Marines. And we practiced going, you know, when you go off a ship, you go down a rope ladder and you jump into a landing craft. Mm-hmm. And you got to bend your knees right or you break your ankles, and because you had a backpack on, a rifle, and a helmet. So you had a lot of weight, and so you had to drop right. So we had to practice that, and the craft would be going up and down with the waves, so you'd have to wait till the craft was at its peak, and then you would drop into it. We all loaded up, and pretty soon we found out we landed up on Wonsan, which is near Wonsan, which is the capital of North Korea. So the infantry had already been there, of course, ahead of us. But when we came there, man, that was, it wasn't a big landing like World War II probably, but there was aircraft carriers, there was bombers, and the fighter planes were strafing, and they dropped a lot of bombs before we went in there. So everything was, and the battleships, there was one battleship with us. And boy, when he fired, we could feel it on the deck of our ship, and the air pressure from it. So anyway, pretty soon we landed, and we only went in a short ways, and we slept on the ground a few nights there, and then pretty soon they said, well, we got to get back on the ship. The landing was kind of like a fake landing, and it was to draw the enemy off the front lines a little bit and send them up our way. I guess that's what the plan was. We had a lot of South Korean soldiers with us, and of course, a lot of times Koreans would come walking down the road, and you couldn't tell if they were North or South Koreans. Or sometimes they were soldiers dressed as civilians, and they had hand grenades with them, and you go up to them and they might throw a hand grenade at you, you know. And so, or some of them had a pistol under their clothes, and so we would never let them come up close to us. We would send out a couple of friendly South Korean soldiers out to search them and ask them questions. And they would search them before they let them go any farther. And, you know, like sometimes they'd find they had a hand grenade or a gun on them. And then we ended up going back down in the south part of Korea, and they took us down there. So then I spent a few more months there, and at that days they had points. You know, you got some, just like World War II, you got points. And finally I had enough points in the summer of '53. I had enough points, so then I shipped out of there. It was crowded. Guys were sleeping all over the place, but we didn't care. We were heading home, but I remember you get a rough day and the guys were throwing up all over the place on the ship. Pretty soon when we got near Seattle, they told us, now you're going to be able to see the Seattle and that next morning. So boy, everybody was up early, and we stood on the railings of the ship there, and pretty soon we could see Seattle, and everybody was so excited to think we made it back to the States. And we spent a couple days in Seattle. I remember I've always been fond of the coffee place, you know, where they give you the coffee and that. Salvation Army.
Oh, Salvation Army, yeah.
Yeah, they had 2 trucks there, and we had coffee and rolls right off the trucks, and boy, that was like being in heaven. And we all went right over there and had coffee and rolls, and then they said, all right, we're going to feed these guys, give them all the ice cream they want.
Yeah.
So we each ate a half a gallon of ice cream. When we were in combat, you know, I said, we didn't get any coffee or snacks during the day, you know, we were lucky to, sometimes they would bring us a hot meal at supper time, but other than that, sometimes we eat canned and boxed rations, you know. But I got so, I'd make coffee with a blowtorch. I'd put it on a stand, the coffee pot, and then I use a blowtorch to heat the water and make the coffee that way. And pretty soon the guys would smell coffee, and even the officers would come by. Norm, is the coffee ready yet? And,
Did you have any fear factor, or was this a job to be done?
no, I didn't really feel any fear. No, I just thought we were doing a good job. And I didn't seem to worry about it.
So you were in the 1st Cavalry Division. What was your rank there?
I ended up with Sergeant First Class. I did well, really. I was in charge of our radio section the last while there. Yeah, that experience means a lot to me. I never forget it. It's always in the back of my mind. In fact, at one time it bothered me a bit, and then it went away. But now, as I get older, in fact, I've been seeing a counselor a little bit because I think about it too much, and it makes me cry when I think about the experiences over there. And when I think about my friend that died, I couldn't give you his name right now. We used to sleep next to each other, and you know, he never came back from the hospital. And 2-3 days they said he died in the hospital. And, he wasn't wounded, he caught some illness. And he died. And I wrote a note to his wife. I had all his belongings that he didn't take to the hospital next to me. So I got his wife's address, and I wrote her a note, but I never heard from her. But I did write her a note to say what a great friend he'd been. I think a lot of people don't realize, especially the Korean War, they think it didn't amount to much. You know, it lasted 3 years. I think around 30 to 40,000 Americans were killed. But, you know, to most people today, they think the Korean War didn't amount to much. It did a lot to help South Korea become the booming nation they are. I mean, North Korea would have taken them over, and they'd be just like North Korea, communist.
Citations and medals and things like that?
Yeah. I have them. I'll show them to you after. I got them in the bedroom there. I got them hanging on the wall.
One more. Terrific.
But like I said, now, experience never goes away.
Thank you. Enjoy your cup of coffee.